If you are anything like me and you live by principles, biblical principles, all right, then please stay tuned. And if not, go on, you scroll. This video is not for you. I had a lot of questions recently asking if I am Christian, and my answer to you is I am not the churchy kind of Christian. I am the kind of Christian who believes in the fundamentals and the principles and the patterns and the parallels and parables in the Bible, and I live by them. That is where my faith has grown very strong, is from the biblical principles. However, I do my best each and every day to be the best version of myself, and that version includes behaving Christ-like. All right, I do my best to demonstrate forgiveness. I do my best to demonstrate loving kindness, and it's not easy. Some days are better than others, and other days are worse than others. But from where I stand right now, looking back at everything I've overcome, I can tell you this, that there is nothing better than following the principles out of the Bible and watching yourself become more and more like Christ. He came and he conquered the world for us to live in it. And what I learned from his teachings is that the people that lived when he lived, they persecuted him. And because they did whatever they did to him, we will also be persecuted. I've accepted that. And the sooner we accept that and the sooner we teach that to our kids, the better of an understanding we are going to have of how to live on earth, peacefully or in detrimental misery. That is entirely up to you. A very important point that I had to come to realize is that when you do not live your life according to the principles that you have set yourself and you've grounded yourself in, all right? I'm going to call this the principles that God sets before us, all right? And when you do not follow those principles, you will go astray and you will continuously make the same mistakes until you realize that the principles that you were set out to live by, you stepped out of them. You stepped out of the parameters of those principles, and that's the reason you will continue making the very same mistake over and over again. Okay, so what I had learned was that I had been making the same mistake over and over again in my relationships and with different people, okay? You see, my biggest problem in my relationships was that I continued to apologize for things that never were my fault. My pattern was that I believed that it is in the nature of men to cheat. I was of the idea and the impression that men do not express their emotions. And therefore, I believed that it was okay whenever they abused me. And I believed that in every situation that occurred, it was never their fault. So yes, I literally went out there and I married a person who had the personality and the characteristics of my late dad, who abused my mom for years on end. And then I ended up with 6 kids, with 3 different men. What was the common denominator? Yes, it was me. And what I learned from all of that is that God's principles, they always come with limitations or parameters or boundaries. For what it's worth, let's call it either limitations, parameters, or boundaries. Those limitations had been set for my protection. And because I didn't value myself enough, I didn't see that those limitations were there to protect me. Now, for whoever's watching this out there, and for those of you who follow these biblical principles and you understand how important it is to follow those principles and to understand that God is the one that sets limitations before us, and those limitations are not there to destroy us. They are actually there to protect us. I realized that a lot of my mistakes and a lot of the things that I had actioned, I had failed at appropriately carrying myself out and carrying out those lessons. That some lessons I made them for years on end. All right, I'll give you an example. 9 years married to the same person who did the same thing. And I just kept apologizing when it was not even my fault. And all because I never understood what it was like for each person in the relationship to take accountability for their own actions. I took accountability for the entire failure of the marriage, and I blamed myself. For many years, I beat myself up about it. And then I got into another relationship, abusive as well, and another relationship, a marriage. Both failed. And I could not see that the reason they were failing is because there were limitations that I had overstepped and boundaries that I had overstepped. And only once I learned those boundaries and those limitations did I actually embrace the fact that it is not me that's a failure. It was the situation that was a failure, and I kept making the same mistake. And you that's watching me right now, you don't have to beat yourself up about any of this. The situation failed. Yes, the relationship has failed. That does not make you individually a failure, okay? Understand that some things have got to fail in order for other things to fall into place, all right? So I learned that those marriages, they had to fail, and my life had to fall apart in order for other aspects to fall into place. And once we accept this and we embrace that this is God's will for our lives, everything else will start falling into place. You don't even need to move a finger in order for things to fall into place. There are certain things that you have to do with consistency, with discipline, and with self-control. You do the possible, and God will do everything else that's impossible. Don't give up, okay? None of this makes you a failure. What it does do is that it must make you realize that you have been chosen for something greater. Your purpose in this world and in this life is a lot greater than what you think.